I never imagined I'd be sharing my story here, but I'm at a loss and desperately need advice. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and my fiancé Jake, who's 30, proposed to me 6 months ago. We've been together for 5 years, and I truly believed we were perfect for each other. Our backgrounds are quite different. I come from a middle-class family, while Jake's family is quite wealthy. Despite this difference, we've always gotten along well, and I felt accepted by his family. Jake and I decided on a lavish wedding, partly due to his family's insistence. They generously offered to cover most of the expenses. As part of our wedding preparations, Jake and I went ring shopping together. We found stunning matching rings that cost a small fortune. Jake's parents insisted on purchasing them for us as an engagement gift, which was incredibly generous of them. Last week, we hosted a small engagement party at Jake's parents' house. The guest list included mostly family and close friends. Jake's sister, Emma, who's 25, was also there. My relationship with Emma has always been decent, although we're not particularly close. She can be a bit dramatic at times, but I never thought much of it. Looking back, there were signs of tension between Emma and me that I should have paid more attention to. About a year ago, we had a disagreement over a family vacation. Jake's parents had invited us all to their beach house for a week, and Emma was upset that I was included. She made several passive-aggressive comments about how it should be just family, even though Jake and I had been together for years at that point. Jake brushed it off as Emma being Emma, but it definitely created some awkwardness. There was also an incident at Christmas last year. Emma gave me a gift that seemed thoughtful at first, a beautiful scarf. However, I later found out from Jake's mom that Emma had originally bought the scarf for herself, but decided she didn't like it. Instead of returning it, she regifted it to me. It wasn't a big deal, but it did make me feel like an afterthought. Despite these minor issues, I always tried to maintain a cordial relationship with Emma. I made efforts to include her in our plans and always remembered her birthday with a thoughtful gift. I even helped her find an internship at my company last summer, which I thought would bring us closer. However, she quit after just 2 weeks, complaining that the work was too demanding. I felt embarrassed since I had vouched for her, but I tried not to let it affect our relationship. During the engagement party, Jake and I were proudly showing our rings to everyone. People were admiring them, trying them on, and passing them around. The atmosphere was joyful and lighthearted. As the party was winding down, Jake and I decided it was time to put our rings away safely. That's when we made the shocking discovery that they were missing. Initially, we thought someone had simply misplaced them. We asked everyone to help us search. We looked everywhere, under furniture, in drawers, even in the garden. But the rings were nowhere to be found. As time passed, people started to get worried. These weren't just any rings. They were incredibly expensive and held great sentimental value for us. Jake's mom suggested we check everyone's bags, just in case. Most people were understanding and agreed without hesitation. But when we got to Emma, she refused. She became incredibly defensive and insisted we had no right to look through her personal belongings. This immediately raised red flags for me. Jake tried to reason with Emma, but she wouldn't budge. The atmosphere became tense and other family members started to get involved. Eventually, Jake's dad had to step in. He took Emma's bag forcibly and opened it. And there, hidden at the bottom, were our rings. I was in complete shock. I couldn't believe Emma would do this. When confronted, she vehemently denied everything. She claimed someone must have planted the rings in her bag, but it didn't make any sense. Why would anyone do that? And why was she so against us checking her bag in the first place? I was furious. I demanded we check the CCTV footage from the house, as Jake's parents have security cameras installed. Emma protested loudly, but Jake's parents agreed it was necessary. We all gathered to watch the footage, and it clearly showed Emma taking the rings when no one was looking and slipping them into her bag. At this point, I lost my composure. I started yelling at Emma, demanding to know why she would do such a thing. She just stood there, not saying anything. I told Jake I wanted to press charges. These rings were worth thousands of dollars, and what Emma did was theft, plain and simple. But then, to my utter disbelief, Jake tried to intervene. He said we shouldn't be hasty, that it must have been some kind of mistake. He suggested we should all calm down and talk about it in the morning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. His sister had just been caught red-handed stealing our engagement rings, and he was making excuses for her? Jake's parents seemed torn. They were clearly embarrassed by Emma's behavior, but they also seemed reluctant to involve the police. They suggested we sleep on it and discuss it the next day when everyone had calmed down. I was too upset to argue anymore. I took my ring and left, telling Jake I needed some space. He tried to follow me, but I told him I wanted to be alone. I drove home in tears, feeling betrayed not just by Emma, but by Jake too. As I drove, memories of past incidents with Emma flooded my mind. There was the time she accidentally spilled red wine on my white dress at a family dinner, or when she conveniently forgot to pass on a message about a change in plans for Jake's surprise birthday party, leaving me out of the loop. At the time, I had chalked these up to carelessness or forgetfulness, but now I wondered if there was more to it. I also remembered the countless times Jake had defended Emma's behavior, always finding an excuse or a reason to forgive her. He would say things like, "That's just how Emma is," or "She doesn't mean any harm." I realized that this pattern had been going on for years, and I had been too eager to keep the peace to address it. It's been 3 days since the incident. Jake has been calling and texting constantly, trying to smooth things over. He keeps saying we should forgive Emma, that she must have had her reasons. But I can't shake the feeling that this is a huge red flag. If Jake can't stand up to his sister now, what will happen in the future? I'm starting to question everything about our relationship. Was I too blinded by love to see the issues with Jake's family dynamics? Have I been making excuses for Emma's behavior all this time, just like Jake has? And what does Jake's reaction say about his priorities and his ability to be a supportive partner? I keep thinking about our future together. If we get married, Emma will be my sister-in-law. The thought of having to deal with her antics for the rest of my life is daunting. And if Jake can't set boundaries with his sister now, how will he handle it when we have children? Will he always prioritize keeping the peace in his family over standing up for what's right? I'm also struggling with feelings of humiliation. The engagement party was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of our love and commitment. Instead, it turned into a nightmare that exposed the cracks in our relationship and Jake's family dynamics. I can't help but wonder what the other guests must think of me, of Jake, of our relationship. Part of me wants to forgive and forget, to chalk this up as a one-time incident and move forward. After all, we've been together for 5 years, and up until now, I thought we were happy. We've built a life together, made plans for the future. Is it worth throwing all of that away over this? But another part of me feels like this incident has opened my eyes to issues that have been there all along. Jake's inability to stand up to his family, his sister's apparent dislike of me, the way his parents seem to enable Emma's behavior. These are all problems that won't go away just because we ignore them. I'm torn between my love for Jake and my self-respect. I don't want to be the kind of person who lets others walk all over them, but I also don't want to throw away a 5-year relationship over one incident. But is it really just one incident, or is it the straw that broke the camel's back? I could really use some outside perspective on this. Am I overreacting? Should I forgive Emma and move on for the sake of family peace? Or should I stand my ground and insist on pressing charges? And what about Jake? Is his reaction a deal breaker? How do I navigate this situation without losing myself in the process? For those who have dealt with difficult in-laws or partners who can't set boundaries with their families, how did you handle it? Did your relationship survive? And if they did, how did you move past the resentment and rebuild trust? I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and the decision I make now will shape the rest of my life. I want to make the right choice, not just for me, but for my future as well. Any advice or insights would be greatly appreciated. Update. I want to start by thanking everyone who took the time to read my original post and offer advice and support. Your words have been a source of strength during this incredibly difficult time. Unfortunately, I have to report that things have only gotten worse since my last update. A few days after the ring incident, I agreed to meet Jake to talk things through. He seemed genuinely remorseful for how he had reacted at the party and promised to have a serious conversation with Emma about her behavior. He assured me that he understood why I was upset and that he would support me in whatever decision I made about pressing charges. I was still hurt, but I decided to give him a chance. We agreed to take a few days to think things over and then make a decision together about how to handle the situation with Emma. I felt cautiously optimistic that we might be able to work through this. However, the very next day, I received a call from my best friend, Sarah. She had overheard something at a local cafe that she thought I needed to know. Apparently, Emma was there with some of her friends, bragging about how she had ruined my engagement. Sarah said Emma was laughing and telling everyone how she had stolen the rings to teach me a lesson for trying to marry into their family. I was devastated. Not only had Emma stolen our rings, but she was now gloating about it publicly. The malice behind her actions was now clear, and it broke my heart. I immediately called Jake and told him what I had heard. I expected him to be as angry and hurt as I was, but instead, he sounded doubtful. He said Sarah must have misheard, that Emma wouldn't do something like that. I couldn't believe it. I told Jake he needed to take a stand for me, to confront Emma about what she had done. But he kept making excuses, saying we shouldn't rely on secondhand information, that we should talk to Emma directly. At that point, I'd had enough. I told Jake that if he wouldn't confront his sister, I would do it myself. And that's exactly what I did. I called Emma and told her I knew what she had been saying. I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that I wanted nothing to do with her in the future. Emma didn't even try to deny it this time. Instead, she laughed and said I was being overly sensitive. She said it was just a harmless prank and that I should learn to take a joke. When I brought up the fact that she had stolen expensive jewelry, she dismissed it, saying her family could easily afford to replace the rings. I was so angry I could barely speak. I told Emma that what she had done was not a prank. It was a crime. I said that if she ever came near me or my belongings again, I would press charges without hesitation. After I hung up, I called Jake and told him what had happened. I expected him to be outraged on my behalf, but instead he seemed more concerned about keeping the peace in his family. He suggested that maybe Emma was just going through a difficult time and that we should try to understand her perspective. That was the last straw for me. I realized that Jake would always prioritize his family's feelings over mine, even when they were clearly in the wrong. I told him I couldn't marry someone who wouldn't stand up for me, and that I was breaking off our engagement. Jake begged me to reconsider, saying he loved me and that we could work things out. But I knew in my heart that this wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about Jake's inability to set boundaries with his family and his unwillingness to support me when I needed him most. The past week has been incredibly difficult. I've returned the ring to Jake's parents and moved out of the apartment we shared. Jake's family has been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between apologizing and trying to convince me to change my mind. As I packed up my things from our shared apartment, I found myself reflecting on all the little moments that had led to this point. I remembered the time Jake and I had planned a romantic weekend getaway, only for Emma to suddenly have a crisis that required Jake's immediate attention. We ended up canceling our trip, and I later found out that Emma's emergency was nothing more than a bad date. There was also the incident at Jake's parents' anniversary party last year. I had spent weeks helping to plan the event, but when the day came, Emma took all the credit. Jake said nothing, even though he knew how hard I had worked. At the time, I told myself it wasn't worth causing a scene, but now I see it as part of a larger pattern. I even recalled a conversation I had with Jake's mom about a year ago. She had made a comment about how Emma had always been the baby of the family and how they all felt the need to protect her. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now I see it as a red flag I should have paid attention to. The hardest part of all this has been letting go of the future I had imagined for myself. Jake and I had talked about having children, buying a house, growing old together. We had shared dreams and plans, and now all of that is gone. There are moments when the grief of losing that future feels overwhelming, but then I remind myself of why I made this decision. I think about how it felt to stand alone at that engagement party, with Jake defending his sister instead of me. I think about all the times I've swallowed my feelings to keep the peace in Jake's family, and I know that I've made the right choice, no matter how painful it is. I've also been dealing with the fallout from our social circle. Some friends have been incredibly supportive, but others seem to think I'm overreacting. I've had people tell me that all families have drama, that I should be more understanding. It's been hard not to doubt myself in the face of these comments. But then I remember the look on Emma's face when she was caught, the sound of her laughter when she dismissed my feelings on the phone. I remember Jake's hesitation, his constant excuses for his sister's behavior. And I know that I deserve better than this. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything that's happened. It's been helpful to have an objective perspective, someone who can help me untangle my feelings and validate my experiences. She's been helping me see that my feelings are valid, that I'm not overreacting by expecting basic respect and support from my partner and his family. One of the hardest things to come to terms with has been the realization that Jake and I had fundamentally different values when it came to family. I always believed that when you marry someone, you become a team, and that team should come first. Jake, it seems, will always prioritize his family of origin over any family he might create in the future. It's a difficult thing to accept, but I'm glad I learned it now rather than years down the line. I'm not sure what the future holds for me now. The life I had planned has disappeared, and I'm having to reimagine everything. It's scary, but there's also a sense of possibility that I haven't felt in a long time. For the first time in years, I'm making decisions solely based on what I want, not what will keep the peace or make things easier for Jake's family. To those who advised me to stand my ground in the original post, thank you. You helped me see that I wasn't overreacting, that my feelings were valid, And to those who are going through similar situations with difficult in-laws or unsupportive partners, know that you deserve better. Don't settle for someone who won't have your back. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'm better off facing it alone than with a partner who doesn't truly support me. It's going to be a long journey to heal from this, but I'm committed to taking it one day at a time. Thank you all for your kindness and support during this difficult time. Your words have given me strength when I needed it most.